6 wins from 6, top of the log. Yeah, I suppose I'll take that for now. It's time to start harping on rugby. My name is Jeff Pagano and welcome to Harpin On Rugby, where with the help of some fellow fans, I get the chance to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland and the wider rugby world. My first contributor this week is earning his 61st cap. Welcome back to Mr. Tom Coleman.
Evening, Jeff. Evening, Rich. Good to be back.
Good to see you. And also joining us is someone making appearance number 39, coming to us from the Great Rock of Gibraltar. Hello to Mr. Rich Mifsud.
Evening, lads. Good to be back again.
Indeed, good to have you both. Right, so let's crack on with our feature match of the week, which was, of course, Leinster v Lions in round 6 of the 24-25 BKT United Rugby Championship. Well, at kickoff time, at least, the weather was behaving around the Aviva. It was mild enough for late October, dry and not much wind as Sam Prendergast got the match underway, kicking towards the south stand, Tom.
Sam did indeed, and the first thing I noticed that Andrew Osborne was trying to relive his moment against Connacht by thinking he could run right through and catch the ball for another easy try. But unfortunately,
it was worth a shot.
It was worth a shot. Yeah, he was thinking about it. He says maybe this professional game isn't too bad. But the Lions got their lifter up and no such luck for Andrew this time round. Yeah, I think what we noticed straight away is something we've been talking about for the first 5 or 6 games of the season. Just Leinster's line speed and pressure really hemmed Lions in for the first few minutes of the game. And that's a pattern now. We've seen enough games to know that this is the way Leinster are going to play. And I thought Hugh Cooney had a good game, central enough to that type of pressure defence. I know he got a huge hit later in the first half, where Lowe got a turnover, but that sort of epitomises his play and he him slotting in at 13, which is a very what Brian O'Driscoll always used to say, it's the most difficult channel to defend. Well, Hugh, you wouldn't think of a young guy who just slotted in and he sort of epitomised Leinster's play in the first sort of 15-20 minutes. I actually thought we played very well. I know that in some ways the first half was divided into 2 halves. I thought, even though we were behind in the scoreboard after the first, but I thought we played really well for the first 15-20 minutes. I thought our line speed was good. Hugo Keenan was getting on the ball a lot in attacking positions and really pressurising. That Lions exits was out of their 22 was short, and they weren't getting much distance, and we were hemming them in. Didn't take long for RG Snyman, who's sort of getting his highlight reels in the last 4 games have been, YouTube and TikTok quality. And he straight away he was in. He had a bit of a charge down on their 9, I think, and then ended up with a bit of a poach. And sort of the Lions got pinged for holding on. And so Sam had a reasonable enough kick to make it 3-0, and sort of that sort of underlined the good start that Leinster had, because at that stage the Lions were struggling to get any sort of foothold in the game. We made a little bit of an error then after that. We spoke too soon. Luke McGrath, for whatever reason, back passing to, he was obviously looking for a kick and hit it off straight off inside our own 22, hit it off RG. He's 6'10" or 11, whatever he is, and quite wide. It's hard to miss. But yeah, he missed him as he was passing back. And it sort of summed up Luke's half for me in a way. You don't want to harp on players too much, but Luke didn't have his best game in blue for us. Just some of his play around the ruck, and it was noticeable. Unfortunately, he's a different type of player to Jamison Gibson Park, and I think Luke may be suffering from not fitting into the process and the systems Leinster are playing at the moment, because our play is noticeably different when he's playing. And we spoke the same about Ross Byrne in the first few games as well. These are 2 guys. It doesn't make them bad rugby players. It just means that they're not really slipping into the system that both Blandal and Nienbar and Cullen seem to be implementing this season. And they're, every player's got deficiencies in their game. There's very few perfect players. If they are, we know who they are. They're all the world-class ones we've grown up looking over the last 30 years. But I think the 2 lads, Ross and Luke's deficiencies, are sort of more showing up more in the system that we're trying to play. Ross from, sort of attacking 10 point of view, and helping putting pressure on defence like the rest of his backs. And then Luke, it's just that quick ball is just not his forte. And a lot of the momentum during the first half was sort of lost by poor quality ball. And yeah, as I said, just he started off poorly, but that trying to do a 22 exit, and it was hit Snyman, and sort of give the Lions easy access into our 22. Other than that, I said we had some really good phase play as well throughout the first half. As I mentioned, Hugo joined the line a lot of the times, and obviously Doris was central to what we were doing. He's such a good lad at, when you're coaching, just sort of when you take the contact, he just seems to gain yards after contact. That's that. I'd love to see what it is amongst the top players in the world, but his yards after contact is always outstanding. He always gets that defensive line on the back foot. The Lions then made it 3-3. Michael Mill was pinged for holding on. Again, I was probably a little bit critical, Michael, online. Again, just, without concentrating on the negatives, but he has a knack of carrying it into contact all the time, where if you look at the rest of the forwards, we tend to tip on pass and keep that momentum going. And I did notice a lot of times Michael carried into contact, it was either ended up in a box kick because the presentation was too slow, or in some instances was a penalty given away. So look, I think it's not a criticism. I think, look, I'm sure the Leinster coaches know better than me, and Michael, he's just that side of the game he needs to develop if he wants to become a really top quality loose head. And he has pressure coming behind him in young Boyle and Joe Mack's younger brother Paddy. So look, that's the pressure they have to play under, and it's a skill set he'll have to develop. But so I think that's something the coaches will have to go away and work with him. We had another 22 entry after that, and without mentioning poor old Luke again, he sort of, I don't know if he fell asleep at the ruck or got blindsided. The ball sort of came out behind him, and he was still looking up at the south stand, and then he got pinged for offside as well when he didn't retreat after the Lions snaffled the ball, and that sort of gave them an easy exit. We gave another way a penalty in shortly after that. I think Snyman was pinned for playing the ball on the ground after he tried to offload to Luke. And in fairness to Luke, I'm not going to blame him this time. I think one of the second rows for the Lions got a hand in before the offload, and then RG played it on the ground, and that sort of made it 6-3 to the Lions. I think at that time during the game, we got into a little bit of a kicking battle with the Lions, and Leinster a lot of the time usually come off on the upper side of kicking battles. But at best, I think it was a draw, and probably at worst, I think the Lions won that kicking battle. I think they ended up getting some good territory, and we sliced out a few kicks. Young Osborne on the west side stand, we lost some yardage. So there was a few kicking battles where we lost yardage, and some of our kicking was we were going long all the time, and the Lions were reading it. But there was huge gaps in between the first defensive line and the Lions back 2 or 3 that were hanging back, and we seemed to go long or try to go long all the time, whether it be through Sam Prendergast or James Lowe. When in fact some of the times it just needed probably a medium kick. And would it again pick Luke's forte box kicking is not his. That's where you needed a box kicking now. And I think somebody like, God forbid, will pick somebody positive from Munster, but I think somebody with Murray's eye for a box kick and his ability to drop it in certain zones would have made hay against that Lions defense with compliments to him. It's just we were missing that type of a player against the way Lions were set up. I think Luke gave a couple of penalties. We gave a couple of penalties away in a row. Then there was a kick through, I think, from, I can't remember who kicked it through, but it was a good chase originally, and Luke McGrath was paying for going off his feet. And I think Brian Baird probably helped him driving off their feet, and he gave the Lions another chance for a kick. I think it was about 55 meters. And it was at the edge of the 10s distance, so it didn't quite make it. It was pulled wide. We gave away another penalty after. I think Slimani was pinged at the scrum for an knee down. It's an interesting one there. He didn't seem happy enough with it, and the Lions scrum has been quite good when we look at the stats. I see some of the stats flying up with the URC, but I think overall our scrum was decent enough. It wasn't a huge platform for us, but still one of those. I know we look at our own team more than any other team, So we look at every single penalty, and I'm sure if other supporters are listening, they look at their team as well. But we seem to be on the wrong side of the refs since the season began with penalty calls. That's not saying it's not all our fault, but it just we're giving away a few penalties that other better teams would penalise us more. Eventually, we got out of that kicking battle. We had we had a really good exit on. I think it was James Lowe. He must have made 60 meters with a kick, and there was a great chase down by the Leinster defence. Again, the Leinster's defence, even though our attack sort of fluctuated a little bit over the 80 minutes, our defence was brilliant all night. And obviously Nienbar is asking a lot of our kick chase as well, which has improved from last year. And the Lions were pinged. This time we decided to go for a line out into the corner. It sort of all looked all set up. People around me going, well, why don't we take the three? And I suppose when you've got Max Deegan, Ryan Baird, and RG Snyman, you think there's a damn good chance that you should at least get your own ball. But the Lions got up really well at the line out and got a hand in and pulled it back on their side. Unfortunately for them, I think it sort of bounced. Instead of going to the 9, it went to one of the props or the hooker, I can't remember which, and he got bundled back over his own try line. And we ended up with a 5-meter scrum. We had a couple of really 3 short carries, really tight. It's interesting, again, just before mentioning Josh's try, which came off the 3rd carry in close in. It's interesting the difference between Luke McGrath and Jameson Gibson Park in these instances. I would say, and again, it's very hard to be. It's you can only go on what I see. Jemison tends to take charge of those situations and dictates where the ball is going, and is always looking for that outside edge or looking for that pass back on the blind side, which we've seen a few times. Where Luke was quite happy to stand off each ruck, not be involved, and just let players carry it around the corner. So there's definitely a different dynamic going on there, depending on who's playing at 9. But thankfully, the reward was still the same in this instance. As I said, there was 3 short, powerful carries. I think Doris did most of the damage on the first carry, and the Lions were struggling to fold in as we got around the corner, and Josh just got it down. It was hard to see from where I was sitting in the stand, but the referee gave it, and it was sort of what we needed, just be coming up to before half time. As I said, 1 or 2 other things just to finish off the half. I just finished off. I thought Cooney had a good game. He got a big turn. He helped with a big turnover in that end of the second half. Will Connors will be proud of the technique. It was down below the knee, down below the ankles, and James Lowe got in for a lovely turnover. Nothing came of it on the scoreboard, but it's nice. It shows you how well the Leinster system. The reason I mention it again is how well the Leinster system is working at the moment. You can slot somebody in like you, Cooney, and you're getting that same degree of performance in that sort of key position in defence, and that just shows you how well, without even being there or looking to see what they're doing week on week, it just shows you how well Leinster are training and getting up to speed with the defensive system and defensive calls. I just thought positives. First half positives was mainly the line speed and our carrying into contact, making those yards after contact. And probably the negatives, really, just a bit of indecision at 9. Our kicking game was we're going long and we didn't adapt to that when maybe we should have shortened a bit. I also noticed that we were putting a lot of bodies in at the ruck to clear out rucks. And one of the first things I mentioned after the game was the Lions were very, very good at making tackles and bouncing back into the line. I thought their defence was superb for most of the game. They just got tired, really, basically, as they couldn't get any attack going themselves, and it's very hard to defend for 80 minutes, no matter who you're playing. So sort of credit to them, and that sort of minimized what damage we could do on line breaks. But other than that, like it was an unusual first half. Normally we were bonus point up so far this season. It was a proper match and fair dues to the Lions that came with a game plan, and they were definitely putting it up to Leinster in the first 40 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking before the season started about the kind of standards like Leinster would be expecting, literally from the kickoff on day 1. And I mean, basically, we're playing every match, no matter who the opposition is. And when we as fans are looking at it, we're thinking, okay, however well we're playing today against this lot, what would we do this against Toulouse or La Rochelle in May? We can't help thinking about having to keep up those standards. So it's easy to look at that look at each game with that kind of critical eye. But the fact of the matter is, we've been picking really strong teams every week, and like you say, getting off to quick starts in these matches. We kind of get used to it, But when we come up against a good defense, which is going to happen, and it's definitely going to happen when it comes to May, there's going to be more of a challenge, and it's not always going to be as straightforward. I mean, there were times when we moved the ball from our half of the field up to the 22 almost effortlessly. It was just the movement, and you can see the kind of what Bayandel has done, especially if you're there. You get a broader view of what's going on, and you can see the way the players are moving. It is a new system, but they seem to be buying into it, and they are able to get it. But obviously, there's going to be differences, and of course, you talked about Luke. It's nothing against him personally, but it's the type of, there's different types of scrum halves. When Jamison Gibson Park came to Leinster at first, we were playing differently. It was Schmidt ball. It was practically exclusively box kicking. It was a different game than he was used to, and he didn't look as good adapting to that when he started at Leinster. But now we've switched it around, and now he's playing the game he's been playing since he was in New Zealand, pretty much, and he's more of a high tempo. It's a high tempo style, and which means that, and we're in a situation now that Luke, not only is Luke playing, may not be able to play that, but there's also, we've seen a couple of players coming behind him in Foley and now Finton Gunn that might be more suited to that system. So we might have to look to see, what kind of maybe what the pecking order is at Leinster going down the line, but we'll see about that. But anyway, listen, but the key was our defense, like you said, in that we saw it from the first half. I mean, we talked about at one stage the Lions were ahead, right, 6-3.
Yeah.
It was a good bit into the game, but they didn't score again after that, and the amount of times that they had the ball and we forced a knock on. I mean, I almost lost count. So there was a lot of positives in both senses. What did you make, Rich?
Yeah, it was. I think the first thing that needs to be said, and Thomas touched upon it already, is that Lions came to Dublin to play. I mean, they're no mugs. They're a pretty decent team, and unless things go very seriously wrongly for them, I see them going deep into both competitions, both the URC and in Europe. So I think credit where credit's due, and I think that's the first thing that needs to be said. As far as we were concerned, the point's been made. We have a tactical system, and you need to have the cogs in those particular wheels to make it work. And if you have one which isn't quite right for it, then it's not going to happen. And I think that's the case with using Luke McGrath in a tactical system that his skill sets are not suited to at all. Pretty much in the same way, though, at 10, when you have a mixture of Ross and Jamison or Finton Gunn or Cormac Foley, it'll only be when to properly judge them in attack. It'll only be when we have two of a kind. So it's either Jamison and Kieran Frawley, or Gunn and Sam, or Foley and Sam, or any combination of the fast tempo halfbacks that we have. So basically, it was, the defense was, and we can see the step up in defense from last season quite clearly. Yesterday it was being used, and and this sounds stupid, but it was being used defensively, but also there were glimpses of when it's used offensively, and it's almost as if the mindset changes. So when we're in our half defending, it's the defensive bit, but when the ball is in the opposition half, then they become a pack of ravenous wolves, and they're hunting down the mistake, which, and as you've already mentioned, Jeff, that I think in the second half alone, there were about 5 knocks on by the Lions as a result of the defensive pressure. They basically, they just couldn't deal with the intensity and the oppressive nature of it. And probably because they were getting tired, but our defense seems to increase in tempo as the game progresses. So which is hat tip to the strength and conditioning guys, because the stamina is just unbelievable. And added to that, as Tom has already mentioned as well in his input, it's the kick chase as well. And I think that's improved again from last season, where all that needs to improve, of course, is the kicks themselves. But as using the old adage, the kick is only as good as the chase. So our chase has improved tremendously. Sadly, Andrew Osborne couldn't pick that one up in the first seconds of the match. But that was just a taster of what was to come further along in the match.
Yeah, and I mean, just quickly back to that opening sequence. I mean, it wasn't even just going for the try from Andrew Osborne, but it seemed like we orchestrated every aspect of that opening exit. It took the Lions struggled to get out of their 22 right from the kickoff. And it was Snyman pretty much involved every time, blocking and getting in their faces. And it's almost like he knew what they were going to do. And we had everyone moving perfectly to start the pressure. We're playing it in such a way as we want it. We want to get that early lead. And it didn't quite work for us. But again, credit to the Lions defense for this. But also, it's like if we're going to rely on getting the ball quickly out to the wings or whatever. I mean, if a play breaks down when the 13 is passing to the winger, for example, that doesn't necessarily mean they're at fault. They need it to be quickly as possible from the base of the ruck or wherever the play is started. So there's a lot of cogs going on in that system. But still, listen, we got the score. We forced our way. We got into their 22 and we got close to the line. We got that try. Having fallen behind, we're really good at instantly fighting back. Getting a restart which wins us the ball back and putting pressure on the line. We got the lead, and like you say, at halftime the score was Leinster 10, Lions 6. Well, before we return to the pod, first a little reminder of all the different places you'll find us in the Rugger sphere. Myself and the lads are recording an extra chat on our YouTube channel looking at Ireland's November opposition. And to get access to all our latest content, as well as our presence on all the different social media platforms, you can bookmark us at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. Please be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe as needed. But back at the Aviva Stadium, a misty rain was starting to fall as the Lions restarted the match, Rich.
They did. It was raining, and that clearly changed the dynamic, not least for the Lions, who are more used to playing in dry conditions where they can fling the ball around, and they are a joy to watch when they're playing at home. But in terms of the second half kicking off, not an awful lot was happening in those first few minutes. And pretty much the game was between the 10-meter lines, nothing really coming off for either side. I think both sides were trying to get come to terms with the wet conditions that were permeating through them. The 45th minute, so they didn't give it much time. Both Slimani and Milne got the Bishop's crook and were pulled off. I didn't think, and I may be, I'm hardly an expert on scrummaging and prop play, not by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think either of them had a good outing as what they would have wanted themselves. But anyway, they were both taken off after 45 minutes. And Andrew Porter and Tom Clarkson came on. Again, the match continued, and pretty much still a scrappy affair. Nobody seemed to get a grip on it. We gave away a scrum pen 10 minutes into the second half. Even the comms were saying that this was probably Andrew Porter's reputation preceding him, this perceived reputation that he has for angling in. The penalty was against him. And as I said, even comms were saying it was a bit harsh, that it shouldn't have been. But anyway, we got our own back a minute later when Tom Clarkson got a scrum penalty back for us. Play continued. We got some pretty scrappy line-out ball. But then, and I think this is, and I made a note of minute 53, and I think this is where Captain Fantastic decided to take the game by the scruff of its neck. And credit to the lad. He's just an unbelievable player, an unbelievable athlete. And I think he has this instinctive knowledge of when to push that button, where he says, okay, this is where it happens. And, far more intelligent people, and certainly more rugby intelligent people than I, have seen the potential with him as captain. And, that was pretty evident. That was so evident. And, he had a huge carry on this minute and minute 53 of the match. Then off the ensuing breakdown, again, Luke McGrath with a very poor pass to Sam Prendergast, which he somehow managed to pick up off his bootlaces. Fired a pass across to Osborne, adjudged to have been forward. I don't know. I wasn't at the match. I saw it on television. On television, it didn't look forward. Or let's just say I've seen them not given. And I think that's probably the fairest I can say. But anyway, the ref was there. The ref was in line, and he was the one who called that. By this time, it's pretty relentless pressure, both when we have the ball and when they have the ball. So Lions are really, really struggling trying to get out of their half, never mind their own 22 on occasion. Again, another passage of play with a neat little grubber from Sam Prendergast on the 22, setting loose James Lowe. But and again, Lions defense to the last gasp on this occasion, with Van Veek charging across and managing to disrupt the play. Ended up with a scrum to the Lions as a result. So almost got across the line. So already, like I say, that the pressure is intensifying, and it was only a couple of minutes later there was a goal line dropout from the Lions. A couple of very good carries from Hugo and again Caelan Josh, and then we see this little diamond shape with Snyman leading at the tip, and I think it was Cooney on one side of the diamond, Tom Clarkson on the other, and Sam hiding in behind the not inconsiderable bulk of Snyman. So he gets the ball back from a pullback from Snyman, passes it to Josh, who runs an absolutely lovely line. And if it wasn't for the defender there who grabbed onto his jersey, as it was, he managed to get well into the 22. Play continued. James Lowe goes hard at the line. And then we start pick and goes. That ends up in Lions conceding a pen for offsides. So we tap and go. Gus carries. Josh changes the point of attack with a neat little reverse pass to Caelan, who then goes over with a little bit of help from his friends, and try time. So 17-6, all in all, very well worked try. Created with a mixture of obviously the strength, brute force, but also very much the nous of changing the point of attack and finding the weak shoulder to get across the line. That was converted, so 17-6, and we move on into the final quarter of the match. So 4 minutes in, 64th minute, both Sam and Luke McGrath come off for Ross and Cormac Foley. I see why they do this. They want to keep the old and the new heads combos going. But for my money, I would have left Sam on and see what he could do with the speed of ball that Cormac Foley is more than capable of providing. I think I need to make a point here about Sam Prendergast. when you see, I was going to cover this at the end on the closing thoughts, but I think it's appropriate to mention it now. When you see a player having so much time on the ball that he seems to be operating on a different planet from everybody else around him, that is class. And this kid has got that in spades. And some of his, waiting until the last possible millisecond to release the player, to go through into contact and then pass the ball back, offloading in contact, and the whole range of kicks. Yes, of course he's going to make mistakes, but that's just two things. One is inexperience, and B is creativity. But you want him to be creative because eventually that creativity will tip the balance over the inexperience and the mistakes. But what a player! What an absolute class act. So anyway, I digress slightly, but I would much rather have watched the pairing of Foley and Sam Prendergast there. But anyway, it wasn't to be, and we had Ross and Cormac Foley. Nothing much really happening in the match, bit of toing and froing. I think that this is where we reach the stage where we keep people at arm's length, hence the strong starts. And I don't know whether, and this is something that a theory I've been mulling over in my head, but although I'm not totally convinced myself as yet, but I think that this is Ninaba applying tournament tactics in a league setting where you expend the minimum amount of force needed, the Pareto principle, basically, the minimum amount of force needed to get the job done. And then you go, well, okay, because there are bigger games, all due respect to the opposition, there are bigger games coming. And I want my people to be able to be fit and healthy. Quite apart from the fact that it says I have complete trust in my defensive system and in the ability to keep people at bay. And that is pretty much what we did. I mean, we kept them scoreless in that second half and most of that first half as well. Anyway, so play continued. And whilst it may not be as pleasing on the eye, if you look at it from a purist's perspective, the tactics are there to be seen. It's, I'm going to hit you with everything I got. I'm going to get my points on the board, and then I'm going to sit back and let you play. And then I'll hit you on the counter if I can, because I've got the weaponry to do so. And pretty much that's what's happening. There was a time between the 70th and 75th minute where the pressure was intensified. They may have elected this particular part of the game, but the D stepped up another level on all features of both in our own half, but more importantly in their half. We forced a considerable number of turnovers, usually because of the conditions for knocks on, but also they gave away pens. And this continued into the 80th minute, where the defense, yet again, turns the ball over on their 22. We get a scrum penalty. I mean, the game's finished, obviously. The clock is in the red. But the attitude is, let's carry on. We go for the corner. The ball is taken by Sneyman. The maul is set up, goes forward, then resets a wee bit. Stephen Smith gets his mitts on the ball. It charges forward. It gets collapsed. Ref has no option other than to steal the try from Stephen Smith, the poor bugger, and awards the penalty try and yellow card, which was, no complaints with that. It was just going forward at a rate of knots. So yeah, that was the end of the match. Good intensity, good intent right up until the 80th minute. They didn't just they could quite easily have just tapped and kicked for touch after that penalty. They didn't. I think people like that anyway. Especially if you listen to the post-match interview with Sam Prendergast and their desire to give the visiting faithful more tries, but alas, it wasn't to be on the night. But hey, a good win, 24-6. I don't think it flatters us. I think we were good enough for that points differential, not least because of the defensive efforts. We just didn't allow them to create opportunities where they could I mean, and to be fair, I can't remember them threatening our line at any stage in that match. But I may be wrong, of course.
No, I mean it didn't. I don't ever feel. I don't remember feeling in any way anxious. And that's nothing against the Lions. The Lions are a type of team. We've seen the way they played so far this season. They're a particular team that if you just give them an inch of space, they can. And they did it a couple of times. Quick offloading. They tried to get that game going, but even our scrambling is so good that even if they may make 10, 20 meters, there's enough cover, more than enough cover to snuff it out. So they really couldn't improve on that lead they got in the first half. The other thing you were talking about, the scrums, you mentioned the crucial word I think is reputation. Porter has a name for things going on his side of the scrum, but also the Lions front row has its own reputation as well going into the match. I don't think they'd conceded a penalty in the previous few rounds at scrum time, and so it's hard not for the referees not to have this consideration. Going into a game, they know the two sides and what they're capable of. So if they're unsure about a call 50-50, it goes down, they're probably going to lean towards the side that's not conceding penalties. So that did work against us, but again, it just all comes back to defense. But one more thing. I'm obsessed almost by these goal line dropouts. I'm obsessed with what the other teams are going to try to do when they have a goal line dropout to prevent the ball somehow ending up in the hands of Caelan Josh and him putting us right back on the front foot. It's just with that, like a try, the Van der Fleer try came from that as well. And we're just wondering, what are they going to do? I've seen them try to kick it in any which way, different angles and stuff, but somehow when you give it a good hang time, that gives us time to adjust and him to get in position, and it gets to him and he barges forward, beats 2-3 tacklers, gets us at the 22, and all of a sudden we're back on their line, and within a couple of minutes we scored a try. So that's something that I don't know. I'd say when we do get to May and we're playing the big knockout matches, I'd say they might have worked out some kind of way. So it'll be interesting to see how we counter that. But for the moment, it's almost undefendable the way we're handling that as a set piece at the moment. But still, as you say, it was a comfortable enough second half, and we never really. Well, what did you think, Tom? Were you worried at all in that second half?
Yeah, no. I think Rich summed it up perfectly there. I think pinning the Lions back inside their own half. I think we had 75% territory that second half. That shows you. I think we got to grips with their kicking game, and after that they had very little out. Our defense was so good that they weren't able to carry out a defense. And once we nullified sort of losing ground in some of the kicking battles we had in the first half, the Lions had really next to no territory at all in that second half. And I think, I could be wrong, I think they'd only won 22 entry in the second half, and that was just inside the 22 really. So yeah, they were completely snuffed out. Yeah, it was a good performance, as in sort of we had the lead, we were going to try and build on it. I think Rich is right, we didn't do enough in attack for the try bonus. I think that would have been a bit of robbery, because we didn't create that amount of many chances throughout the game. It's not like we left tries behind in the first half or anything like it. Yeah, and I suppose interesting points out of the half itself as well. I suppose still, as you touched on, a few penalty counts. I think we're in double figures for all of the games so far this in the league. There's a percentage of them that I don't know that's down to the scrum and reputation and angles and stuff like that. So regardless of how the first block of 6 games goes, that's something we'll have to look at. You can't really be in double figures. I know it's 10, 11, 12 at the most, but I think there's only one game against Treviso where the penalty count was down as far as 6. So we the discipline would have to step up a bit. And people might look at our tackle percentage, which is a good 10% off where it should be. If you adhere to the theory books of 85% plus, we're down around the mid-70s. But I think that's more down to our overall defensive strategy that Nian Barr is employing. It's a different type of defense. It's not. So I think we can disregard the old tackle percentage stat for the rest of the season, because it doesn't go anywhere to give the picture of where we're at. But yeah, I thought it was a clever second half. And I agree with Richard again. It would have been nice to see Foley and Prendergast on for at least maybe 10 minutes, just a bit of an overlap. While we weren't 100% comfortable on the scoreboard, I thought we were 100% comfortable in the match itself, and it would have been a good chance to give those younger guys maybe 10 or 15 minutes, because they teamed up well down in the Merging Ireland tour. In the last game, I think they played against Cheetahs, and they worked well together. So it would have been nice to give them a little bit of a window, but hopefully that will come again over the course of the autumn internationals.
Yeah, and just one final point on the defense. I mean, we looked at just how our backline was set up. I mean, it was literally a brand new Leinster center pairing. We had Hugh Cooney making his debut. I mean, you mentioned he did a big hit on his opposite number, and it was actually a great battle between him and his opposite number, Van Wyk, I think his name is, and 13, and he did a big hit on him. And now Van Wyk got in his hits as well. It worked both ways, but it was considering it was his first start, and it's the Aviva, and I mean, it wasn't a full Aviva, but they filled the lower bowl. I mean, it was technically a sellout, and 22,000, I think it was. So it was an amazing performance. The two of them worked really well together. He was right in on the systems, right in on the when we did have good attacks. But great to see Robbie back as well. And
it's first game since July, isn't it? First game
absolutely. And it's really, really promising. With bigger games coming down the line as well, to see them working so well. But listen, and as I say, we kept them scoreless in the second half. I mean, if you do that in every game, you're gonna win a hell of a lot more than you lose. So there's a lot of positives. I say it every week. I think there's no people don't talk too much about solid defending, and you don't see highlight reels of the best sets of defending. And like you said yourself, like, we might miss tackles, but I think Nienaber is playing a different kind of percentage game himself. He's saying you can take a few more risks, because the way we're set up is, even if we do miss a tackle, there's enough people behind him to allow for it. So some of those numbers might be misleading, as you did say. So it's there's a lot going on there, but overall, disappointed not to get that bonus point, because we've been kind of almost expecting it week in, week out. But at the end of the day, this was a top of the table battle, and we came out on top. We came out with the point, 6th win in a row, and the final score, as we say, was Leinster 24, Lions 6. Well, elsewhere in the URC, Connacht bounced back from their home defeat to Leinster last week to comfortably slay the Dragons with a try bonus. But while both of the other provinces earned away losing bonus points, they may feel differently about them. Munster got late tries in Durban from Calvin Nash and Tadhg Byrne to at least come away from their South African tour with something. But I doubt Ulster will take much consolation from their losing bonus point in Cardiff, as they saw a 19-0 halftime lead wiped out by 3 converted tries. There were also wins for the Ospreys, Bulls, Scarlets, and the champions Glasgow, who impressed away to the Stormers. All of which means that with a third of the regular season completed, Leinster are the only 100% team left, with a 6-point gap to Glasgow. Both Ulster and Connacht are in the top 8, and Munster are down to 11th. Now, going back to our feature match, Leo Cullen was as pragmatic as ever in the post-match presser, saying, quote, "If you wind the clock back 6 weeks and told us we'd get 29 points, we'd have been delighted," end quote. And when it comes to our Facebook page, among the post-match comments was this one from Jackie McEachern, which read, quote, "Tough match, although I think we likely would have scored more, maybe gone a bit easier if Jemison Gibson Park had been playing," end quote. Do you disagree, or would you have said the same thing a different way? Well, we always leave a post open on the Facebook page after the full-time whistle for Leinster and Ireland matches. Why don't you join the conversation next time? And this now brings us to our final thoughts, starting with Tom.
Yeah, look, I think both of you have summed up as well. Short and sweet. It's disappointing maybe to break the 30 out of 30, but I think we all agree we probably didn't do enough on the night to get that. It's nice to get this block of 6 games done with 6 wins, because there's some impressive team behind us. I think definitely Glasgow and Bulls are the pick of not the rest necessarily, but the pick of the top 3 with Leinster. They look the most 3 consistent teams that will be there towards the end of the season. But yeah, goodwill all in all. As you say, tried out a new centre partnership. I think we're still probably trying to fit some players still into our system that we've spoken about, like Luke and Ross. and he was handy to bring on the likes of Porter when need be in the second half, just because he adds so much dynamism to the team. And when he comes on, the way he plays, not just everyone looks to scrum, but it's his general play around the park. No, good win overall. And as I said, credit to the Lions. I thought their defence, for a team short that doesn't really have many Springbok stars, when you look at their compatriots in Durban, they're definitely team that's more than the sum of their parts, and a team that's playing for their coach. Simple as I said after the match, guys bouncing out of tackle and up into the defensive line time after time for 80 minutes tells me that's a team that's in good stead, and they'll cause a lot of teams trouble. But it's difficult to get a block of games on the road for them as well. I'm sure it's a difficult thing. Like we know ourselves from going down to South Africa, it's a difficult thing to go down and string a few results together. But yeah, good win again. And just where we want to be come the end of the first phase, sort of before the autumn international. So it'll be interesting selection. I think Ulster game is our next game, and we don't have a home game, believe it or not, now till Claremont on the 15th or 14th of December. So 6 weeks away. Whatever. It's a bit mad, but so we'll have itchy feet by the time we get to Claremont for a bit of rugby.
Yeah, I mean, just on the Lions, I mean, I think as far as we might have thought going into when the formation of the new URC, they might have been supposedly the weakest of the four sides going into it. And as we were saying on the preview show with Kigo, someone said on Twitter, I think during the week, that we had more Springbok caps in just RG Snyman than the entire Lions squad. However, that doesn't always mean it's a bad thing, because it means they're more likely to play together. There's not a lot of players coming out and going to camps and stuff. So then, a lot of this team would have played in the Currie Cup recently and got all the way to the final. And they've had a lot of string of games together, and they've showed it first few weeks of the season. And they definitely showed it in parts on Saturday. And it's to their credit. And they could definitely be contenders for top 8 and high finish in the league this season as well. What did you make of it, Rich?
Yeah, pretty much agree with everything that's been said. Just to add a couple of shout outs, I thought Gus and Cooney had very good outings, both of them. And I suppose the important thing is that they both looked like they belonged. I think that's probably the best compliment I can pay them. I've already touched upon Sam Prendergast and the fact that he exudes class. Interesting also that we saw a continuation of the policy of having senior players up in the coaches' boxes. I don't know if you saw the James Ryan was there in the coaches' box, and pretty much in the same way as Caelan Josh had been a few weeks back. So I like that, and it's good to see that it continues, and not just with the captain, but with people who are captains in their own little sections of the team. And Robbie just did what Robbie always seems to do. He's out for ages, then comes back, and you wouldn't have thought he's been out for months. What an outing. He was substituted on the 79th minute, for God's sakes. Outrageous, honestly, outrageous. But what a guy to have alongside you if you're making your debut, as Cooney was, right? Bags of experience, and I'm sure there was an awful lot of quiet conversations being had between the centres in order to navigate the lad through his game at the Aviva. So all in all, I mean, if you're nothing but pleased with the first block of 6 games, then you need to be a bit silly about it and overly critical. They played probably below their potential throughout the block of games, and they've only shown glimpses of it. And again, I come back to this thing that I mentioned earlier, which is that I think that they are tactically not just planning the matches, but planning the season as well. And I don't think they've shown what they can do. Just one final point. It may sound controversial, but Tyler Blendahl has made an almost immediate impact in the way that we're playing, in our fluidity. And no disrespect, but for my money, he's way better than Andy Goodman at what he does. The players seem to understand what he wants, and they're doing it, and they're performing. And I think quite quickly getting back to the type of attacking rugby and flair that we've enjoyed and loved over the years.
Well, that's brilliant, lads. Many thanks again to Tom and Rich for joining me. I hope to have you back on again soon. Thanks, lads.
Cheers, Chef. Cheers,
Thanks,
Rich.
Tom.
And as for our next batch of Harpin, well, keep an eye on our YouTube channel during the week for our latest bonus chat, and also our 80 plus column, which will post on Wednesday. With no match next weekend, on Sunday we'll be assembling an all-provincial pod to look ahead to the Autumn Nations series, so be sure to follow us on any or all of our social media platforms, which you'll find at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.